Hi everyone, glad to have you here. This is the place where we share real horror stories that will make you think twice before turning off the lights. If you enjoy true creepy experiences, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Now, let's get into today's story. Back in high school, our class went on a field trip to a large park filled with winding trails and thick woods. The plan was to take a hike and have a picnic afterward. We left the classroom, got on the bus, and after a short drive, arrived at the park. Our teacher led the way as we began hiking down the trails. The class was average in size. I didn't have close friends with me, so I just blended into the group. The trail we followed twisted through the park for nearly an hour. Toward the end of the hike, we entered a section where tall trees lined both sides of a narrow path. The branches above tangled together and blocked most of the light. Some of the kids started whispering and pointing to the left. I thought maybe they saw a deer or something, but then I heard someone say there was a man in the woods. I stopped walking and looked into the trees, but I didn't see anything. What I did hear were odd rustling sounds. Another student said something like, "There he goes." I stared into the brush but saw nothing. Still, the tone in their voices made me uneasy. The teacher kept walking and didn't seem to notice. Eventually, we moved on and finished the hike, which ended in a grassy area with picnic tables near where the bus had dropped us off. The teacher started setting up lunch while everyone else relaxed or talked. I felt restless. Since I didn't have much to do, I decided to walk back toward the woods alone. At first, it was just something to pass the time, but once I was back on the trail, I remembered the talk about someone being in the woods. I kept going, curiosity taking over. Then I heard something. The sound came from off the path, deeper in the trees. I stopped walking. The noise got louder. Before I could do anything else, a man burst out from between the trees and landed on the trail right in front of me. He looked filthy, like he hadn't bathed in days. His clothes were torn and his eyes locked right onto mine. I froze. Then, without a word, he started sprinting straight at me. My body reacted before my mind did. I turned and ran as fast as I could. The man chased me. I could hear his footsteps closing in, each one thudding louder than the last. I didn't dare look back. I just kept running, lungs burning, legs pounding. After what felt like forever, the footsteps grew faint. He had stopped. It didn't feel like he got tired. It felt like he simply gave up. I didn't stop until I was back in the clearing. I found another student and told him what happened. The two of us walked a short way back down the trail, but the man was gone. I refused to go any farther. The rest of the trip passed without incident. I never saw the man again, but I never forgot the way he looked at me or how he chased me without saying a word. I still wonder what he was doing out there in those woods and why he came after me.
When I was a kid, my dad moved me and my two younger sisters to a rough but manageable suburb just outside of Denver. He had just gone through a painful divorce after our mother left him for someone else, and suddenly he was on his own, raising 3 daughters. A few months passed, and though we hadn't made many friends, the 3 of us stuck together. My sisters were still little, and since our dad worked long hours in the city, I was left in charge. We filled our days riding bikes all over town. We explored the river trails, back roads, and even followed the train tracks that crisscrossed the neighborhoods. One area near our house always stood out. A long ditch ran along both sides of the nearby railroad tracks. One side was steep and covered in thick brush, while the other had a deep dirt path that looked like it had once been used by maintenance trucks. Everyone called it Dead Man's Ditch. It felt dangerous and exciting, and we loved riding past it during the summer. We also had this game we played. If someone spotted a license plate with repeating numbers or letters, they'd call it out and try to land a punch on the others. It was wild and stupid, but it kept us entertained. On one of those warm evenings, we had been out riding for hours. The sun had started to dip behind the rooftops, and we were almost home. My youngest sister led out in front, my middle sister close beside her, and I followed a few bike lengths behind. Not long before this moment, a silver sedan had passed us in the opposite direction. I noticed its plate had repeating 6s. I called it out and forgot about it. As we coasted up the street, I heard a car coming up slowly behind us. Something about it didn't sit right. I turned around and froze when I recognized the same silver sedan from earlier. This time, the driver was close enough for me to see him clearly. He looked to be in his 40s, possibly Hispanic, wearing a red and blue flannel. He didn't speak. He stared at me for a second, then sped up and moved past us. But as he passed my youngest sister, he reached through his open window and grabbed the handlebar of her bike. For a terrifying moment, he tried to pull her toward his car. She screamed and fought to stay upright. Suddenly, he let go and slammed both hands back on the wheel. My sister took off like lightning toward the ditch. I yelled for them both to follow her. The car was still behind me, gaining speed. My heart pounded in my chest as panic took over. The ditch was coming up fast. I told my sisters to head down the path into the ditch. I figured the man wouldn't risk ruining his car by chasing us there. My youngest hesitated at the top, scared of the steep drop, but my middle sister flew without hesitation. I kept riding, trying to stay between the car and my sisters. The man was right behind me, his bumper nearly touching my back tire. My younger sister finally took a deep breath and made the jump down into the ditch. I followed her without thinking. The three of us landed in the thick dirt below. The car screeched to a stop at the edge of the ditch. The man got out. He was wearing only that flannel shirt and nothing else. He began waving his exposed self at us. I stepped in front of my sisters, shielding them. We stood there, frozen. After a few minutes, he climbed back into his car and sped away. We stayed hidden for a while, too shaken to move. When it felt safe, we climbed out and rode home as fast as we could. My dad was furious when we told him. He loaded us into his car and drove around looking for the man's vehicle, but it was gone. Later, we filed a report with the police, but all we had was a silver car, the first 2 digits of the plate, and a vague description of the man. Nothing came of it. A few months later, the city filled in the ditch, but not before it saved our lives.
Summer was winding down before my final year of high school. I had a few weeks left of freedom before school started again. That night, I had time to kill while waiting for a girl I'd been seeing to come home from some party. Around 11, I decided to head out to an old spot deep in the woods, about 20 minutes from where she lived. It was a place my great-uncle used to take me fishing when I was younger. He had passed away a couple of years back, and I had only returned there a few times since. The lake itself had a strange history. On one end sat a forgotten cemetery, its gravestones dating back to the 1700s. I remembered hearing stories that a drummer from George Washington's army was buried there. Other headstones marked entire families wiped out by old diseases. Some of the stones were so weathered, they couldn't even be read anymore. There was always something eerie about that place. It felt too still, like the woods were holding their breath. Most people I knew thought I was crazy for going out there alone, but I didn't care. I had a green Tacoma with off-road gear, and the long gravel road leading in wasn't a problem. All the potholes and tight turns helped keep most people away. Hidden behind miles of thick forest, the cemetery overlooked an old reservoir that once supplied drinking water to the nearby towns. Towering pines surrounded the lake, giving it the feel of being completely cut off from civilization. That isolation was what drew me in. I parked my truck by the water's edge and sat there for a while with the windows down. The only sounds were frogs, crickets, and the breeze brushing the trees. I felt calm, thinking back on old fishing trips and quiet days spent on the lake with my great-uncle. As a kid, I used to ride my bike 20 miles a day just to reach hidden fishing spots. I was the kind of person who didn't get spooked easily. I had seen broken bones, heart attacks, and worse. None of it ever got under my skin. But that night, something did. I checked the time and realized I should head back. The road home started with a steep climb up a gravel path that wound through the mountains. I flicked on my high beams to watch for deer and began the drive out. Then I saw it. Ahead of me, where thin trees grew tightly together, something moved. It darted between the gaps in the forest with terrifying speed. It was pale, maybe 4 feet tall, and looked impossibly thin. Whatever it was moved with inhuman speed, weaving through the trees without sound. I didn't get a clear look at its face or any real features, just this ghost-like figure flashing through the woods. My heart dropped. Every hair on my body stood up. I don't know what it was, but I knew I shouldn't be there. I slammed on the gas, and my truck skidded and slid over the gravel as I tore down the road. By the time I reached the edge of the forest, I realized I was crying. My hands shook on the steering wheel. I'd faced a lot of intense situations in my life, but nothing like that. I still don't know what I saw. Maybe it was a cryptid? Maybe something else. I just know it wasn't human, and I hope I never see it again.
Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.